The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and fear, and every second felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The monitors around the intensive care unit screamed numbers no one wanted to hear, and the word impossible hung in the air like a verdict already signed. Doctors had done everything medical science allowed, every protocol, every emergency measure, and still the most powerful woman in the city, the female CEO everyone thought untouchable, was slipping away. It was the kind of night where hope usually died quietly behind closed doors. And yet, on that same night, a poor single dad with nothing but tired eyes and a worn jacket was about to do something no one would ever forget. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that even the smallest person can change the biggest destiny, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Ethan Miller had not planned to be at the hospital that night. His life rarely followed plans anyway. He was a single father of a 6-year-old boy, struggling to keep food on the table after his wife had died 3 years earlier from a sudden illness that had crushed his world overnight. Since then, Ethan worked wherever he could. Construction during the day when there was work, night shifts as a cleaner when there wasn't. He slept in fragments, lived in exhaustion, and carried a quiet grief that never really left him. That night, he had brought his son Liam to the emergency room after a bad asthma attack. They sat for hours under flickering fluorescent lights until Liam finally stabilized and fell asleep curled against Ethan's chest, breathing softly at last. While waiting for discharge papers, Ethan noticed the unusual tension building down the hallway. Nurses moved faster, doctors whispered urgently, and security tightened. Even someone like Ethan, who lived on the edges of society, could feel that something serious was happening. He overheard fragments of conversation about a critical patient, a powerful executive, a woman whose name appeared on buildings and headlines. She was the CEO of a global company, admired by some, feared by others, and respected by almost everyone. Now she lay unconscious, her life balanced on a razor's edge. Ethan tried not to listen. Powerful people lived in a different world, one he had never been invited into, but fate has a way of dragging strangers into each other's stories. When a nurse rushed past, dropping a file on the floor, Ethan instinctively stood and handed it back. In that brief moment, he saw the chart, the red warnings, the desperate notes. The woman's condition was worsening fast. Multiple organ failure, severe internal complications. The doctors were running out of options. Ethan returned to his chair, but his mind wouldn't rest. Something about the situation clawed at him, stirring memories he rarely allowed himself to touch. Years ago, before life collapsed on him, Ethan had studied biomedical engineering. He had been bright, driven, full of plans. But when his wife fell ill, he dropped out to care for her, selling everything they owned to pay for treatments that ultimately failed. After her death, survival replaced ambition. His education remained unfinished, his knowledge unused, buried under years of manual labor and grief. As hours passed, alarms echoed again from the ICU. The woman's condition deteriorated sharply. Doctors crowded around her bed, adjusting machines, administering drugs, fighting a losing battle. One senior physician finally stepped back, shoulders heavy, face pale, and spoke words no family ever wants to hear. There was nothing more they could do. They were maintaining life support, but the damage was too severe. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He didn't know why this stranger mattered so much to him, but something inside refused to stay silent. He thought about his wife, about the moment doctors had said the same words to him. He remembered the helplessness, the anger, the feeling that something had been missed. His eyes drifted back to the chart he had glimpsed earlier, and fragments of medical concepts began to click together in his mind. The condition, the symptoms, the failed responses, it didn't fully align with the assumed diagnosis. Ethan wrestled with himself. He was nobody. A cleaner. A poor single dad who could barely afford rent. What right did he have to question world-class doctors? What if he was wrong? What if he embarrassed himself, or worse, interfered and caused harm? But then he looked down at Liam, sleeping peacefully after nearly losing his own life hours earlier. He thought of all the times he had wished someone would speak up for his wife when it mattered most. With shaking hands and a pounding heart, Ethan approached the nurse's station. He tried to explain that he had some medical training, that he noticed something unusual, that there might be another cause behind the CEO's rapid decline. At first, he was dismissed politely, then firmly. Stress and exhaustion were everywhere, and no one had time for theories from a stranger in worn boots. Security hovered nearby, watching him carefully. Still, Ethan refused to leave. He asked for just one doctor, 1 minute. His voice cracked, not from fear, but from the weight of everything he had lost. Eventually, perhaps out of desperation more than belief, one physician listened. Ethan described a rare reaction, a cascade effect triggered by a specific combination of medications and an underlying condition that could mimic organ failure. He suggested an immediate test and a risky countermeasure that most hospitals rarely considered due to its complexity. The room fell silent. The doctor didn't argue, but his eyes sharpened. The idea wasn't impossible, just unlikely and dangerously late. But unlikely was all they had left. After a tense internal discussion, and with the patient's life already slipping away, the team decided to try. Orders were given. Tests were rushed. A treatment protocol was adjusted at the last possible moment. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Ethan sat back down, his legs weak, his mind racing with guilt and hope in equal measure. He held Liam's hand, silently praying that he hadn't made things worse. The ICU doors closed again, sealing the outcome away from him. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, something changed. The alarm softened. The frantic movement slowed. Numbers on the monitors began to stabilize. A nurse stepped out, eyes wide, disbelief written across her face. The test results confirmed Ethan's suspicion. The treatment was working. What had been assumed irreversible damage was actually a severe but treatable chain reaction. Over the next few hours, the CEO's condition improved steadily. She remained unconscious, but her organs responded, her vital signs strengthened, and the looming shadow of death retreated inch by inch. Doctors who had prepared themselves to pronounce a time of death now stood watching a recovery unfold they could barely explain. By morning, the hospital buzzed with a different kind of energy. Word spread quietly at first, then louder. The woman who was supposed to die had survived the night, and behind that miracle was an unexpected figure no one could quite believe, a poor single father who had refused to stay silent. Ethan expected nothing. He gathered his things, prepared to take Liam home, ready to disappear back into anonymity. But before he could leave, he was stopped. Hospital administrators, senior physicians, and eventually members of the CEO's family sought him out. They thanked him, some with tears in their eyes, others with humbled silence. They asked about his background, his education, his life. Days later, as the CEO regained consciousness, she was told the full story. She learned that while machines and medicine had kept her alive, it was a stranger's courage and compassion that had truly saved her. When she finally met Ethan, still dressed in simple clothes, still carrying the weight of his ordinary struggles, the moment reshaped both their lives forever. The weeks that followed brought changes Ethan never imagined. His knowledge, once abandoned, was recognized and nurtured. Opportunities opened that had been closed for years. More importantly, his belief in himself was restored. The CEO, deeply affected by how close she had come to losing everything, began reshaping her own priorities, using her influence to fund programs for struggling families, single parents, and overlooked talent buried under hardship. But the greatest transformation wasn't financial or professional. It was human. Ethan learned that his voice mattered, even when the world told him it didn't. The CEO learned that power meant nothing without humility and the courage to listen. As life slowly returned to its rhythm, Ethan would sometimes think back to that night in the hospital corridor, to the moment he almost stayed silent. He realized that miracles don't always come from brilliance or wealth. Sometimes they come from exhausted people who choose to care anyway. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that compassion can change destinies and that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who may need hope today. And before this story ends, I have one special request for you. Comment the word hope below if you believe that kindness still has the power to save lives, change hearts, and rewrite endings. Because somewhere right now, in a quiet hallway or a desperate moment, someone ordinary is standing at the edge of an extraordinary choice, and your belief might be the light they need.